Good morning, everyone, and welcome to LAEDC's quarterly economic briefing. It's so great to have so many of you joining us today as we come together to understand where our regional economy is headed, and more importantly, how we can shape it for the better. My name is Stephen Chung. I'm the CEO and president of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation and the World Trade Center Los Angeles. And at LAEDC, our work has always been more than just about analyzing the economy. It's about activating it. It's about connecting people, data, and opportunities to make Los Angeles County more equitable, more resilient, and more competitive. And since our last briefing in August, our team, together with many of you, has been hard at work advancing that very mission. First, we convened leaders from across the county for LAEDC's 88 City Summit just last week in Long Beach, bring together elected officials, city managers, and economic development professionals from cities across the entire region. This event was a powerful reminder that our region's strength lies in collaboration and that our local leadership is essential to driving inclusive growth and opportunity across the county. Second, when wildfire struck part of the region earlier this year, our business assistance team mobilized immediately to support affected businesses, connecting them emergency resources, financial relief, and recovery programs. These are the moments that remind us why local hands-on economic support matters so deeply. And through the generous support from philanthropic and corporate partners, we've been able to distribute direct grants to many small businesses and CDOs to support their recovery efforts. Third, we've continued to strengthen LA's position as a global business hub. Through the World Trade Center Los Angeles, we led a trade mission to Japan, deepening partnership in resiliency, clean energy, and food and beverage, creating new pathways to bring international companies to open up their operations here in Los Angeles that will help us create more jobs and more entrepreneurship opportunities locally. We also partnered with Bioscience LA and regional stakeholders to host a Bioscience LA Week just last week, promoting one of our fastest growing and most promising industries. From research breakthroughs to startup expansions, this sector continues to generate high quality jobs and investments right here in Los Angeles County. And last week, together with the LA Sports Council, we released the 2025 Sports in the LA Basin report, which found that the sports industry generated a staggering $12.1 billion in economic impact for our local economy. From major events to year-round employment, sports continue to be one of the most powerful economic engines and storytelling platforms for our entire region. And with the 2028 Olympic Games and Paralympic Games on the horizon, the opportunities will only grow. You'll hear more about that later from the team. Each one of these initiatives, from local recovery efforts to international engagement to industry reports, underscores one central goal: to build an economy that works for all Angelenos, one rooted in innovation, inclusion, and resilience. So today, as we turn to our economists and data experts to explore the trends shaping our region, I encourage you to think about how each one of us in business, government, education, and community can use this insight to drive action and impact. Thank you so much for being a part of this work, and thank you for joining us this morning. Now, let's take a look at where our economy stands and where we're headed next. Also, don't forget that we'll leave enough time at the end of this session for Q&A. So please use the Q&A function to jot down your questions so that our economists and our team can answer your questions. And to guide us through the economic briefing, please welcome our Senior Director for the Institute for Applied Economics at LAEDC, Shannon Sedgwick. Shannon?
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shannon Sedgwick, Senior Director of the LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics. Thank you all for joining us for our October quarterly economic briefing. It's great to be back with you. Our last briefing was August 18th, and since then, there have been several significant shifts, both nationally and locally, that have changed the near-term economic outlook. Today, we'll walk through some of those developments and what they mean for our regional economy and workforce. Next slide. At the LAEDC Institute for Applied Economics, our goal with these briefings is to connect the data to what's happening on the ground to help policymakers, business leaders, and community partners understand how national trends translate into local realities. Since our last briefing, tariffs and now federal budget impasses and the partial government shutdown are added layers of uncertainty. This policy-driven uncertainty continues to dampen confidence and reshape the economic environment. From a data standpoint, the economy remains resilient, but both businesses and households are adjusting behavior in response to these shifting fiscal and trade conditions. Next slide. Our briefing today covers 4 key areas: the latest U.S. economic conditions, employment trends across Los Angeles County, the economic impacts of increased federal immigration enforcement, and a look at the sport industry's contribution to the regional economy. Each section will provide quantitative insight and context for how these forces are interacting across our economy, from policy to workforce to investment. Next slide. Now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Justin Adams, to walk through the U.S. and the U.S. Current economic conditions. Justin?
Thank you, Shannon. So good morning, everyone. So as Shannon mentioned, I will be discussing key indicators of U.S. economic performance through the second quarter of 2025 and into early fall. As she kind of indicated, the watchword so far this year, without a doubt, has been uncertainty. So we've been grappling with policy uncertainty in the form of ever-changing tariff policies that affect consumption and investment. We've also experienced economic uncertainty with workers and businesses who are trying to navigate aggressive immigration enforcement. And now that the US government is shut down, we're experiencing information uncertainty in that important government statistics like the unemployment rate are no longer being updated regularly. But what we can say, though, is that uncertainty is continuing to drive a mixed picture of economic outcomes. So next slide, please. All right, so let's start off with real GDP growth. So when we last met in August, we were encouraged by the economy's resilience in the second quarter of 2025, with growth coming in at 3%. But the revised figures tell an even more kind of optimistic story, where real GDP growth in the second quarter of 2025 has been revised upwards to 3.8% annualized. And so that's a pretty big rebound from the 0.6% contraction from the first quarter. And it's also worth noting the broader context here. So over the full year of 2023, real GDP growth was 2.9%, and it was 2.8% in 2024. And so the stronger second quarter performance suggests that, you know, the policy turbulence that we've seen so far this year, despite all of that, the economy seems to have strong fundamentals. And, you know, the question is, well, is this going to carry over to the third quarter? We really won't know more until the government reopens, but we'll see. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about unemployment. So we are seeing some softening in labor market conditions, but the changes remain relatively modest. So the official unemployment rate shown in red ticked up to 4.3% in August. That's up from 4.2% in July. And this does represent the highest level we've seen since our last briefing. The broader measure, the U6 measure shown in green, which includes discouraged workers and those employed part-time for economic reasons, it also increased to 8.1% from 7.9% the previous month. While these upticks are small in absolute terms, the direction of movement is a little concerning. And again, we'll learn more whether you know, this improves or worsens when we get additional data once the government reopens. Okay, next slide, please. So we did mention tariff policy earlier. So where do tariffs stand today? And this is an updated chart with data from the Yale Budget Lab, which shows that as of October 17th, consumers face an overall average effective tariff rate of 17.98%. And to put this in historical perspective, so the last time annual tariff rates averaged this level, so this is for the full year, was 1934. So that's during the Great Depression era. Um, while you'll notice that this rate is lower than the April peak of 27.99%, it is still dramatically elevated compared to the 2.40% percent rate that we saw at the start of the year. So the Yale Budget Lab estimates that these higher tariffs have caused the overall price level to rise by 1.3% in the short run. And for the average household, this is equivalent to an income loss of $1,800 for a year. So, unlike 3 months ago when we could point to the decline in tariffs after capitulation day and suggest that consumers were being somewhat shielded from price increases, we now see that tariff rates are essentially plateauing at you could call them historically high levels. I know the Supreme Court might have something to say about the later this month about the legality of President Trump's tariffs, but in the meantime, it feels like we are sort of adapting to a new normal of elevated tariffs. Okay, next slide, please. So let's turn to consumer expectations. So the University of Michigan tracks consumer inflation expectations. And the data that they have suggests that consumers are starting to internalize these higher prices over the foreseeable future. So consumer expectations of inflation over the next 12 months, which is shown in red, um, they stand at approximately 4.6% as of the October reading, and that's a preliminary reading, but 4.6%. Now, keep in mind that the Federal Reserve targets a 2.0% inflation rate as being ideal. So consumer expectations are substantially higher than that. Similarly, 5-year inflation expectations, which are shown in green, appear to be leveling off around 3.7%. And so while these readings are slightly lower than the August levels of 4.9% and 3.9% respectively, they do remain significantly elevated compared to pre-2025 levels. The takeaway here is that consumers appear to be accepting that higher inflation is probably persistent more than transitory, and so the concern is that this acceptance might then, translate into strained household finances, which can reduce consumer spending and then ultimately lower economic growth. Next slide, please. And again, this sense that elevated inflation is sort of becoming accepted as the new normal. It's also reflected in the consumer sentiment data, also from the University of Michigan. And so the preliminary October reading was 55.0, which follows September's reading of 55.1. It, we need more data, but it suggests that consumer sentiment might be plateauing. And to give just a little bit of context, recall that that consumer sentiment stood at 71.7 in December of 2024. Then it plummeted to 52.2 in May 2025, and that was during the height of tariff uncertainty. And then it modestly recovered over the summer. But if you look at the current level, this sort of plateau at 55, it represents only a slight improvement over the lowest index levels that we've seen over the past 2 years. So what this suggests is that we're not really seeing a return to confidence, but instead we're seeing consumers kind of settle into this state of continued concern. So consumers essentially remain significantly more pessimistic than they were at the beginning of the year, and there's little indication that that's going to change um, in the near term, particularly with the ongoing policy uncertainty that we are experiencing. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so looking at business investment, so the picture here looks a little more encouraging. So non-residential fixed investment, which includes business spending on structures, equipment, and intellectual property, it showed pretty strong growth in the first half of 2025. So in the first quarter, investment surged 9.5%. And then in the second quarter, it continued at a pretty robust 7.3%. So digging a little deeper, the Q1 surge almost certainly reflects businesses front-loading investments, trying to get ahead of tariffs. The Q2 growth, uh, it turns out, was driven primarily by spending on intellectual property products rather than on equipment or structures. So it's unclear what that is about, but my feeling is that it's probably uh, surrounding the huge investments that are going on right now in the AI space. The real question is whether this growth will is sustainable or whether we'll see a slowdown in Q3 and Q4, especially as we get more clarity regarding tariffs. Okay, next slide.
Just before you go forth,
Yes.
there's a question in the Q&A asking if you can explain what consumer sentiment means. I think sometimes folks might get consumer sentiment, consumer confidence. If you can explain that a little bit before you go on, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, consumer sentiment. So it is the University of Michigan's. They have it's their term, so it's their consumer sentiment index that they track, and it's how do I describe it? Other than the youth today would appreciate it as hashtag feels. So it's just the general feeling of consumers and how like their outlook um, for how the economy is going and performing and how they are um, how their households are performing as well. So it's really just a sense, an outlook on the economy, but by consumers.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Justin. Oh, sorry.
can I just jump in? So, um, the reason why we focus on what is happening in the consumer space in terms of their perceptions on inflation or just their feelings in general with their sentiment is because you measure GDP, um, is how you measure your economy and you measure growth. And that C, if you've ever taken an economics course and you had that equation, the C is basically your consumer spending. And so that portion of our economy typically runs about 68% of what our economic activity is. And so as we're tracking these consumer spaces and these consumer metrics, it's to understand where that 68% of our GDP might be heading.
Yeah, so happy consumers is a good thing. Um, and yeah, that is why we care about what's going on in the consumer space. Business investment is a smaller piece of GDP, but it is still important because it because well, it does matter. It is sizable, and these businesses are the ones that are growing and expanding and hiring. Um, okay, so let me wrap up. So right now, we're near the end of 2025, and it feels like the U.S. economy finds itself in an uneasy equilibrium. So on the one hand, we have solid GDP growth and strong business investment, and these suggest that the economy is actually more resilient than many thought. But at the same time, this resilience is coupled with elevated unemployment, slightly depressed consumer sentiment, and then as well as high inflation expectations. And so, adding to this uncertainty is the ongoing government shutdown. So, I mentioned earlier that the shutdown contributed to information uncertainty, but the longer the shutdown continues, it'll start to bite into economic performance. So, if you think about it, the federal workforce has over 3 million people. And so the loss of income for millions of households, from furloughed workers, means that consumer spending, and that's getting back to the C, will be negatively impacted. So this is something we'll be watching over the next coming weeks. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Dan Way, or Max.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
Hi all. So my name is Max Thomas, and I'll be presenting data on the employment situation in Los Angeles County. Let's see. In the third quarter of this year. So as Justin mentioned, the government has been shut down for almost 3 weeks. Because the federal government has been shut down, the release of September official labor market statistics has been delayed. So for me to cover quarter three, I'll pair the official data we do have through August with other labor market indicators that run through the entirety of the quarter. Next slide, please. So the first labor market indicator I will present on is initial unemployment insurance, or UI, claims for Los Angeles County. The initial UI claims give a measurement of how many people are entering unemployment weekly. Looking at the week that ends on the 5th of July onward, we can see that UI claims have remained mostly stable year over year for both Los Angeles County and California. Specifically, the Q3 year-over-year percentage change was negative 0.4% for the county and plus 1.1% for the state. However, some industries displayed volatility in their year-over-year changes. So first, the government industry had a 22.1% year-over-year increase in initial UI claims. This likely occurred as the federal government continues to shed federal employees. Secondly, the financial activities industry saw a significant drop in UI claims, with 11.4% year-over-year decline in claims. However, other industries did not see large changes in their claims, and in general, UI claims seem to have cooled following a sharp spike after the Los Angeles wildfires in January of this year, and have begun to move more in line with state UI claims. Next slide, please. So another labor market indicator I will present on is the number of online job postings. This measure counts the monthly new, unique online job postings for businesses in Los Angeles County. Job postings data conveys whether businesses are looking to hire new employees or not, and may be suggestive of potential job growth or contractions. After a post-COVID surge, the figure shows that jobs postings trended down and then flattened by late 2024. Given this, Q3 2025 saw a relatively low year-over-year decline in job postings, at negative 2,332 postings. While some industries had year-over-year gains in job postings over this time, such as the healthcare and social assistance industry, many industries saw declines, particularly private educational services. Some of the gains in healthcare and social assistance may be attributed to recent reforms to Medi-Cal and/or the passage of Proposition 1, which increased spending on mental health treatment. Private educational service declines may have in part been caused by declines in federal funding for universities and/or issues with the rollout of the new FAFSA. However, the year-over-year changes in job postings appear mostly stagnant in Q3, which mirrors the situation throughout the United States broadly, as economic uncertainty may be causing employers to be cautious about hiring. Next slide, please. So now we'll return to more traditional labor market indicators, but these will only be updated through August of this year. First, we'll look at unemployment rates in Los Angeles County and California. Last quarterly briefing, we presented unemployment from July of this year, and it appears as if the unemployment rate has slightly declined since. For Los Angeles County, unemployment is down from 6.4% in July to 6.3% in August, which is below August 2024's unemployment rate of 6.7%. The unemployment rate also fell for the state from 6.1% in July to 5.8% in August, which is also below the state's August 2024 unemployment rate of 5.9%. However, while unemployment seems to be falling month over month and year over year, for both California and Los Angeles County, unemployment rates remain above their pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels and above that of the entire United States. Next slide, please. So next, we'll look at changes in employment counts from July 2025 to August 2025. Total non-farm employment increased by 21,200 jobs over this period. While some industries gained jobs, others lost jobs from the previous month. The largest increases came from government and healthcare and social assistance industries. However, the gains in government are entirely attributed to local government educational hiring, perhaps as the school year began and more employees were needed. All other government-related industries experienced a decline in employment since July. Gains in healthcare and social assistance may have been in part attributable to recent policy changes, along with long-term upward trends in employment. The largest job declines were incurred by the other services and retail trade industries. The retail trade industry could have been affected by softening tourism to the Los Angeles area, caused in part by the Los Angeles wildfires, continuing immigration enforcement actions, and tariffs. Next slide, please. So turning our attention to year-over-year employment changes, Los Angeles County increased its total non-farm employment by 31,600 year over year, representing a 0.7% increase. The largest year-over-year gains were in healthcare and social assistance and government industries. Job gains in this health and social assistance industry were primarily driven by outpatient care and social assistance industries, the latter of which include businesses associated with mental health and substance abuse treatment, along with community housing, which were the main targets of Proposition 1 funding. Despite recent monthly declines in employment, the private educational services industry seems to have gained jobs year over year. Finally, manufacturing has continued its sizable year-over-year decline in employment for both durable and non-durable goods. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll hand things back over to Shannon to present on immigration enforcement in the county.
Thank you so much, Max. A quick note that September employment data was supposed to be released on Friday, and it was not because of the government issues and the shutdown. And so that's why Max included the uninsurance claims and job postings, as those are often can be viewed as indicators of which direction our labor market might be heading into. So we're trying to fill that gap for you a little bit. Hopefully, updated data will be available again soon by our next briefing, and we'll be able to give you some concrete numbers of what actually happened in the labor market. So now let's turn to one of the most immediate policy developments that's really affecting our regional labor market, increased federal immigration enforcement. So next slide. This year, Los Angeles County has seen a sharp escalation in enforcement activity. As of July, there was a 143% year-over-year increase. This rise aligns with that May 2025 directive from the Trump administration that raised the nationwide quota of ICE arrests to 3,000 per day. Activity did slow temporarily after the July 11th federal court ruling, which prohibited ICE from using race, language, or place of work as criteria for enforcement operations in Los Angeles. Still, overall activity really remains above last year's levels. Next slide. Many affected So many affected workers are employed in essential industries like construction, food service, logistics, healthcare support. And these are industries where staffing's already tight. So when enforcement rises, these businesses face unplanned labor losses, production delays, and sometimes reduced hours or capacity. When we're looking at the demographics of arrestees, the data shows that 81% of arrestees were male and 73% were between the ages of 26 and 54 years old. So the prime working age population that forms the backbone of our regional service and goods movement economy. Nearly 70% of arrests occurred in the community, meaning at workplaces or homes. These events have highly visible ripple effects. They're affecting not just those that are detained, but also their coworkers, employers, and families. More than half of those arrested, they had no prior criminal record. So underscoring that the economic impacts are workforce related and not really crime related. Next slide, please. Looking at the broader context of the LAEDC conducted an analysis to understand the economic contribution of undocumented workers. So the LAEDC analysis finds that Los Angeles County's undocumented immigrant population grew from approximately 809,000 in 2021 to nearly 949,000 in 2023. So that's a 17% increase. And our analysis estimated that undocumented workers contribute about $254 billion to LA's gross regional product annually. That's roughly 57% of the statewide total of the economic contribution that undocumented workers are contributing to our GDP at the state level, 57% here in Los Angeles County. In other words, it's not a marginal segment of our workforce. It's central to our regional economic performance. And disruptions in this labor force, they reverberate through multiple industry and supply chains across the county and beyond. Next slide, please. So to help quantify where disruptions are most likely to occur and where enforcement may take place, our team developed the Immigration Enforcement Vulnerability Index, or IEVI. The IEVI aggregates demographic, workforce, and enforcement data to produce a single vulnerability score for each zip code across Los Angeles County. And by correlating census data with verified enforcement reports, we're able to identify neighborhoods where workforce disruption risks are highest. The index allows policymakers, community organizers, local governments to target outreach, training, and business stabilization efforts more efficiently to places that may need it most. From an analytical standpoint, this provides a spatial lens on how immigration enforcement interacts with economic vulnerability. So it's linking enforcement activity to workforce and output risks. From an economist perspective, what we're observing as we're doing analysis on the impacts of increased immigration enforcement is we're observing a localized supply shock, where enforcement intensity raises costs while simultaneously constraining labor supply. So these shocks compound existing pressures from elevated tariffs and high borrowing costs, amplifying the downside risk to regional growth through the remainder of this year. As we continue throughout the end of this year, our team at the Institute will be continuing to monitor how these dynamics evolve and releasing research and data on the impacts of immigration enforcement in the county. Next slide. So now my colleagues will take a few minutes to walk through our recently released report. It was just released on the 13th last week, quantifying the economic impact of professional and collegiate sports across the Los Angeles basin.
Thank you, Shannon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Wei. I am an economist with the Institute for Applied Economics at LAEDC. So next, my colleague Matthew Skyberg and I would like to share with you some key findings from the most recent LAEDC's 2025 Sports in the Los Angeles Basin Economic Impact Study. So this study was commissioned by and prepared for the Los Angeles Sports Council. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Los Angeles Basin spanning Los Angeles County and Orange County is home to more professional and collegiate teams and more world-class venues than nearly any other regions in the world. So the basin is home to 12 professional teams across all major leagues and 56 collegiate programs. So these teams and programs draw millions of fans and connect communities across the region. The strength in the region is also supported by world-class venues and facilities, from Dodger Stadium to Rose Bowl and from SoFi Stadium to the new Intuit Dome, and from community colleges to Olympic-ready infrastructure. The business of sports here is booming. Every year, Los Angeles hosts several major sporting events, contributing additional economic boosts and reinforcing our region's readiness for future global competitions. Los Angeles has become the global template for what a modern sports ecosystem looks like, one that integrates innovation, entertainment, technology, and community investment. As the momentum continues, Los Angeles will once again take the global stage over the next few years with the 2026 FIFA World Cup, 2027 Super Bowl, and 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Next slide. In 2024, the sports industry in the Los Angeles Basin generated record high economic impact across the region. According to our new report, the sports industry in the Los Angeles Basin generated $12.1 billion in total output in 2024. The activity supported nearly 93,000 total jobs, produced $9.7 billion in labor income, and contributed $726 million in state and local taxes. So these numbers reflect more than just the ticket sales. They represent stadium operations, logistics, and hospitality, broadcasting, marketing, training, and thousands of jobs behind the scenes. Next slide. Professional sports continue to drive the Los Angeles Basin sports economy, accounting for the lion's share for the region's impact. In 2024, they accounted for more than 84% of the total industry output, driving activity across entertainment, tourism, and local businesses. Professional teams supported around 78,600 jobs. More than half of those jobs are direct, working for teams, venues, and related businesses, while the rest ripple outward through suppliers and household spending. Altogether, these activities generated $8.2 billion in labor income and $10.2 billion in total output. Next slide, please. So professional sports and related activities also contributed over $2.2 billion in tax revenues across federal, state, and local governments. Among this, $640 million were close to 28% contributed to state and local governments. By type of tax, personal income taxes contributed the largest share, accounting for $1.14 billion, or just over half of the total fiscal impact, followed by social insurance taxes at $767 million. Next slide, please. Collegiate sports continue to represent a key contributor to the region sports economy, with 56 athlete programs supporting more than 17,000 student athletes. The sector generated significant economic value in 2024. USC and UCLA anchor this sector, but it extends far beyond them to public universities, private colleges, and community colleges. Altogether, collegiate sports supported an estimated 14,360 jobs across Los Angeles and Orange counties. Of these, over 8,700 jobs were directly tied to collegiate sports programs, while over 5,600 jobs were supported through suppliers and household spending. Collectively, the industry paid out nearly $1.5 billion in labor income and generated $1.87 billion in total output across the region. So these growing contributions reflect expanded attendance, higher program spending, and stronger engagement from local communities and fans. Next slide. Collegiate sports and related activities also contributed over $400 million in tax revenues across federal, state, and local governments. Among this, $112 million contributed to state and local governments. Again, personal income taxes contribute the largest share, followed by social income taxes. Next slide. Go back one more. Yeah, thank you. So the economic impacts of the sports industry extend beyond the arts, entertainment, and recreation industry through indirect and induced effects. Education and health services industry added nearly 7,400 associated jobs in 2024. Trade, transportation, and utilities industry also added nearly 6,200 associated jobs. Then financial activities, professional and business services, and accommodation food services each experienced more than 4,000 jobs attributable to the sports industry in 2024. Next slide. So looking at the economic contribution of the sports industry over time, since 2021, the Los Angeles Basin sports industry has grown by $5 billion in output and added over 53,000 jobs. Professional sports drove more than 80% of the total output growth and nearly 90% of the new jobs, reflecting a strong, sustained expansion in the industry. Growth was fueled by major facility investments, which expanded regional capacity for global events. Then collegiate sports are also gaining momentum, boosted by the new NIL framework, which allows NCAA athletes to earn income from their name, image, and likeness. And USC and UCLA's move to the Big Ten Conference helped enhance the competitiveness and visibility of West Coast programs. Okay, with that, Matthew, I will hand this over to you to share more information regarding the landscape of the sports industry in the LA Basin.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to continue by starting by taking a look at the professional sports landscape in the Los Angeles Basin. So Los Angeles and Orange counties are home to 12 major professional franchises that cover all the major sports leagues, including the MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLS, NWSL, and WNBA. So no other U.S. market matches that density, and it pays off. Our teams and venues are able to share infrastructure, keep calendars full year round, and draw fans from every community across the two-county region. Recent investments, including the opening of the Intuit Dome and the renovation of Crypto.com Arena, modernize the fan experience. They upgrade technology in premium spaces, and they reaffirm the Los Angeles Basin's status as a global sports capital. Next slide, please. So now as we take a look at fan engagement for professional sports teams, we can see that attendance across the region stayed strong in 2024. The Rams are averaging nearly 73,200 fans per game, which is more than SoFi Stadium's listed capacity of 70,240. The Dodgers led all of Major League Baseball at nearly 48,700 fans per game. And then in soccer, the LA Galaxy averaged over 26,000 at Dignity Health Sports Park, while LAFC averaged over 22,000, and Angel City FC drew over 19,300 at BMO Stadium. The Los Angeles Sparks posted the largest year-over-year increase. They actually rose from around 6,500 the previous year to over 11,000 fans per game. So it was a dramatic increase. And as we can see in the bar chart, almost all stadiums and arenas run near capacity, which just underscores how deep and durable fan engagement is in our market. And that enthusiasm translates directly into local spending at restaurants, hotels, transportation, and retail, multiplying the industry's impact far beyond the stadium gates. Next slide, please. So beyond the professional and collegiate teams in our region, our area is also able to host a packed calendar of global events that keeps hospitality and tourism vibrant year-round. And these events are actually beyond the scope of our economic analysis. So beyond the professional and collegiate sports in the area, this is just additional economic contribution that the sports industry is generating. So in 2024, the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach drew about 194,000 spectators over the 3 days. The U.S. Open of Surfing in Huntington Beach draws around 370,000 fans across 9 days. And then there's the Genesis Invitational, which is a PGA event, PGA tournament, which is hosted each year at the Riviera Country Club, brings more than 60,000 golf fans each year. And this past year, we also hosted the Rugby Sevens World Championship, which was designated as the World Championship for rugby at Dignity Health Sports Park. And they were able to fill the main stadium, and also during the event, had the adjacent track venue at capacity during portions of the weekend. So each of these events, as well as other ones, including youth tournaments and other high-profile sports events, bring visitors, media coverage, and spending that flows directly into local economies. And that reinforces LA and Orange counties can deliver world-class experiences at scale. Next slide, please. So beyond just the team's contributions, behind the excitement of the competition is a deep workforce pipeline. So across Los Angeles and Orange counties, universities, colleges, and certificate providers offer more than 25 programs in sports business, management, and communications. In 2023, they awarded about 370 specialized degrees, and the broader kinesiology pathway produced more than 2,600 credentials. And these, these often serve as on-ramps into the sports business roles. On the demand side, sports business and sports communication occupations employed roughly 54,000 professionals in the region, with about 10,000 annual job openings and a median wage around 64,000. So there's a high growth and well-paying jobs that are occurring. And programs are evolving to meet that demand. Loyola Marymount launched its Master in Entertainment Leadership and Management last year, while UCLA introduced a Sports Leadership and Management MBA specialization. And anchoring this pipeline are established offerings such as CSU Long Beach's long-running Masters in Sports Management. Pepperdine has an MBA with Entertainment, Media, and Sports electives. And Concordia Irvine has an MBA and a Bachelor's in Sports Business. Beyond those, there's also options like USC Sports Business and Management minor. And UCLA has a summer sports marketing and management course that offers undergrad credit. So the alignment between education and employer demand keeps growth sustainable, with local talent ready to step in and lead. Next slide, please. So when you look at the sports landscape, you see more than teams and tournaments. You can see a connected ecosystem linking sports, entertainment, media, technology, education, and investment. So sports analytics, virtual production, fan experience technology, and sustainable venue design are all being developed right here in our region. And these aren't just local innovations, but they're exports that will shape the global sports and entertainment industry. And sports in the LA Basin are a catalyst for innovation and proof that when creativity and commerce are aligned, the communities benefit. Next slide. Okay, so as we look ahead to the global events and as economic engines, this momentum builds towards an extraordinary decade ahead. So we have the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the 2027 Super Bowl, and the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games, which are going to draw in millions of visitors, billions of dollars in investment, and of course, global attention. So unlike other host regions, Los Angeles is ready. Our venues already exist, our infrastructure is in place, and that means long-term benefits without long-term cost, which is a model of fiscal and environmental sustainability. These events are going to drive new partnerships, workforce opportunities, and business formation, ensuring that the legacy extends well beyond the actual games themselves. So as we look ahead, one thing's clear: Los Angeles Basin is more than a sports destination. It's a blueprint for how sports, innovation, and economic development can thrive together. And so our challenge now is to build on this foundation, keep investing in talent, advancing equity, strengthening our infrastructure, and deepening the collaboration between public and private sectors. Because the data tells a clear story that the Los Angeles Basin isn't just a global sports capital, but it's a model for sustainable growth, innovation, and shared opportunity. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Shannon. We'll take some questions.
Great, thank you, everybody. That's a lot of information. So thank you to the entire Institute for Applied Economics team for the great information, great data. We answered a couple questions already. There are a couple more questions here. I want to address for the audience. The slides and the recording will be available by tomorrow on our website. So once you go to laedc.org, if you scroll to the bottom, it will have a link to the slide deck as well as the recording itself as well. There's a follow-up question from a person that basically is asking, when referring to the total jobs for the sports industry, do you have statistics for what type of jobs that number reflects and how many of those jobs are living wage jobs in the LA Basin?
Okay, I will take the first try on in answering this question. So this total number of jobs include both the direct jobs and the indirect jobs and induced jobs. So the direct jobs refers to those are employed by sports teams, venues, facilities, clubs. And then indirect jobs would include those employed in the supply chain, the firms that support the operation of the venues, the teams, including the vendors, the materials, suppliers, and services used by the sports industry. And then when we refer to the induced jobs, we refer to, when the employees of those teams, the venues, and those suppliers, they spend their income, they purchase things, then that will support more jobs in like the service sectors. So like in retail, hospitality, and other services sectors. So in terms of the wage level of those jobs, I don't have the number at hand, but my impression is around 85,000 on average. So it is higher on than the living wage.
So
level.
sorry, Dan, just to clarify, your understanding is that the average wage for the sector is about 84,000.
Yes,
Got
the
it.
average.
Thank you. Second question. I know we only have about 3 minutes, so we might have to do it fast for the team. Barry mentioned it is interesting to see how little of the tax benefits comes to cities when they bear so much of the costs. I think referring to the page that we're talking about is when you broke it down by detailed tax generation of professional sports, it looks like 72% goes to the federal, whereas for county and city gets about 3.2% and 7.2%. I do want to put it in context that if I'm correct with IAE team, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about now $159.1 million to the cities per year, and about 70.2 million to the cities, to the county per year. So combined together for the local aspect, there's about over 230 million dollars of economic impact and taxes being brought back to the city and the county per year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when we're doing an economic impact of the sports industry, the total tax revenue is what is typically incurred on an annual basis. And then that's going towards the state and then local governments, a split between city and county.
Got it. And it looks like, from the distribution of the fiscal impact, the money that's been generated comes from personal income tax and other like social insurance, and that's what's contributing to it. So that's why a lot of it might be going to the federal rather than the local. Yeah, great. Next question. Again, I think we have only about a minute, so we won't get to everyone. We'll try to get to as much as possible. Is there a way to extrapolate the impact of continued ICE enhanced enforcement and impact to the sports industry? With so many global events coming to Los Angeles, it seems like this could be a large headwind. I think we don't have that specific information, but what we can say is that there are anecdotal stories about ICE enforcement that's making certain countries a bit more reluctant about coming to the United States. And then also additionally, there are other things that are happening that the team talked about, including tariffs that have actually turned some of our international partners away from coming to do visitation. For example, I think earlier in another presentation that I did before, we saw that there was a 70% decrease from March to October when it comes to flights coming into the United States from Canada. So that's a direct impact in terms of the number of tourists that will be coming to visit these games. So there will be a large impact. Team, any additional comments on that?
Just that we don't have a data source that would allow us to really analyze that. So it is very much anecdotal. But we also, some of those stories that you're hearing affects our performing arts sector as well, where there are issues with visas for performers. So, they do represent any kind of industry that relies upon foreign talent. It does represent a potential issue moving forward.
One last question. Is there a breakdown on the data for specific cities, not just LA County as a whole?
No, we just do the analysis for the counties. This is for the sports.
The sports.
study. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we just do the Los Angeles basin, which is actually Orange County and Los Angeles County combined.
Yeah, it's based on the data that we have. So I know that there are a couple more questions that came through that we're out of time. If we can go to the last slide. Thank you all for joining us. As you can see, the economic briefing is important because we need to get the information out to all of you so you can make the determination, and hopefully the data will guide some of the decision making. As we're moving forward, please save the dates. As we're moving forward, the 30th Annual Economic Development Eddie Awards is coming November 5th. This is our only gala for LAEDC for the year, so please go on our website. Please support us. All this report and all the information that we provide is supported through our fundraising efforts. So if you can join us at the Rose Bowl, we got a great party planned out for you. So please come join us. We'd love to see you there. And then also the 2026 Annual Economic Forecast. It's a big event for the Institute for Applied Economics, where they showcase the economic forecast for the year, and that's scheduled for February 25th of 2026. So please mark your calendar. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.